nut house. But I am really disappointed I missed the testicle fest. I have to admit, I never was at a testicle fest. So, anyway. Good evening and welcome to the Kaukauna Alumni Association class reunion featuring the class of 1969. How's everyone feeling tonight? Old, right? I know I'm feeling quite old. But 50 years ago today, at this exact moment, you were probably doing anything you could to avoid watching the Lawrence Welk show. At this exact moment. Interestingly, last night, many of you told me you spent last Saturday night at Lambeau Field watching 77-year-old Paul McCartney. Wait a minute, you haven't heard? Watching 77-year-old Paul McCartney. Did you know Lawrence Welk was only 67 in 1969? Just saying. Sir Paul calls this the Freshen Up Tour. How rock and roll is that? What happened to Revolution Number 9 and Helter Skelter? I'm surprised the tour isn't sponsored by Continental Wipes. Yeah, don't listen to me though. I'm the guy who told Brian to be printed all over the newspaper that the first band I ever saw was Cousin Fuzzy and his cousin. So, don't listen to me. This getting old is not for the faint of heart, but consider the alternative. Let's take a moment to honor those in our class who didn't make it this far. Think a good thought, say a prayer, raise a toast, smoke a bowl, plant a flower, whatever it is you do to honor your loved ones. It's legal in a lot of places. Full disclosure, I was never expelled from Kaukauna High School, but I was suspended for a day. One time a group of us went to St. Vinny's and found some amazing double-breasted suits and wide paisley ties. We all wore them to school the next day, and it did take long for all of us to be rounded up into the principal's office. Obviously upset, Mr. Schmidt said, "You could be a leader of your class. Why must you resort to buffoonery?" Looking back at it, he probably had a valid point. But thinking I had the moral high ground here because my answer was honest, I said, "Mr. Schmidt, we thought we'd like it if we dressed like you." Suspended! When Sal Schmidt first contacted to offer the class of '69 Rallymaster job last April, she said the person originally scheduled to take it had to cancel, and others in the class of '69 brought up my name. Her call took me by surprise, so I asked if I could think about it. Well, I hung up, caught my breath, and asked myself, why the heck would the Alumni Association ask me to be the Rallymaster? I left Kaukauna about a month after graduating from high school and visited often when my folks were alive, but the visits were always short. Didn't they usually pick people with high standings and long ties to the community? Of course, the first thing that occurred to me then was that I had been selected due to my accomplishments on the gridiron, court, track, and diamond. Yeah, that had to be it. I made out of a list, fully intending to relive my greatest sports glories with my classmates. Here they are. Number 1. There was the time I bounced right back up after Coach Dave Hash decked me for singing in the shower. Number 2. There was the unforgettable time in freshman football when, after breaking a bone in my hand, I was wearing a pad over it that my mother had sewed using an old red knee pad from St. Mary's. We were practicing behind the library when Coach Noel DeFott noticed my new piece of equipment. Martens, where did you get that goddamn red mitten? Give me that thing, he yelled as he turned and flung it into the canal. Now give me 20 laps. Number 3.
Wait, there's more.
What's...
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. It's great to have your wife up. Number 3. It wasn't just at KHS where my athletic prowess was celebrated. There was the time I ran into Kaukauna legend Bob Dinger-Werdinger at Dick's Drive-In. He loudly proclaimed for all in line to hear, "Martens, if I stuck a broom handle up your butt, I could mop the floor with your hat." True story. Maybe it wasn't my athletic achievements. His choice for Rallymaster. Quickly, I realized it's probably my superior intellect. They must know I'm a very stable genius. Envisioning my Rallymaster address as one of those TED Talks where a witty and educated speaker lends his thoughts on how to solve any number of pressing issues, I sat down to create a master plan, foolproof, that would end world hunger, climate change, sexism, all major diseases, income inequality, racism, fake news, and the erosion of our democracy. This was no ordinary plan. Worked on it for 8 hours and filled 4 legal pads. The next day I couldn't wait to contain my excitement, so I called Sel at 6 a.m. Central and blurted out, "I'll do it!" before she even finished saying hello. Towards the end of the conversation, I asked what it was that made my classmates say I'd make a great Rallymaster, fully expecting to hear how smart I was. They said you're funny. So much for that plan. I erased it off my computer too. So. My lovely wife Cindy and I flew in from our home in Portland, Oregon on Wednesday so we could visit friends and reminisce about the Kaukauna I grew up in. I already knew St. Mary's was gone, but imagine my surprise when we ended up at the site of St. Al's and found it too disappeared. While contemplating the remains of St. Al's, my mind wandered back to that day in 8th grade when I first wore a pair of brand new white stretch Levi's. I had gone all the way to Appleton to buy. My teacher, Sister Virginese, had been giving me sour looks all day, and then finally called me into the office and said, "Michael, those pants are so tight I can see your secrets." Just be thankful that Sister Virginese was not around for yoga pants. By now, many of you are wondering, who the heck is this guy? Well, I'm the 4th child of Geraldine Eve Hens and Julius J. Martens Jr. My siblings include Julie Martens, class of 64, John Martens, class of 65, he couldn't pass him a chance for free booyah, and Tom Martens, class of 67. Our family was best known for running and living above the Julius J. Martens and Company dry-goods store on 3rd Street between Powers Pub and Bob's Inn. Or for some of you more senior members, Bill Clunes and Joe Kleins. Back then, downtown Southside Kaukauna was an active center of commerce. Just looking at 2nd, 3rd, and Dodge Streets, you had a movie theater, a dentist, an insurance agency, a flooring shop, a meat market, a photography studio, a tailor, a millinery shop, a jeweler, a five and dime, a dry cleaner, 2 hardware stores, 2 cobblers, 2 auto dealerships, plus the day and night garage with auto tratini, 2 drug stores, 2 shoe stores, 2 print shops, 2 barbers, 2 liquor stores, 3 barbers, sorry, 2 doctor's offices, 2 banks and savings and loan, 3 clothing stores, 3 grocery stores, and 8 taverns. That's a hell of a list. One of my favorite memories of those days in Kaukauna is that folks there had the best nicknames. Take, for instance, what I consider the 2nd best nickname I've ever heard. Sputsy Drager. Sputsy drove the city's lone street sweeper, which by itself was a source of wonder for me in my younger days. One night when I was about 9 or 10, I was waiting for my mother in the family car, parked out in front of the house on 3rd Street. A black 49 Ford drove down the sidewalk between the street lamps and the buildings. It kind of freaked me out, so I told my mother about it when she came to the car. "Oh, that must be Tit." I looked at her with a huge double take that passed for, "Excuse me." Jerome Hilgenberg, they call him Tit. Gave me a more detailed explanation, but I'll spare you tonight. Now let's not forget the fella my dad bought his Fords from, Nazi Schmidlkopf. I like that name so much I use it for my bowling name for the last 4 years. And we could not go get by without giving a big shout out to some of the best 69er nicknames. Le Pew, Pork, Gopher, Mojo, Moment. They're all gone. The 4 best nicknames I came up with, I realized once I put them down. So, well, then we have someone very much alive: Goose, Stubby, Cud, and Skids. Some guys even got new nicknames replacing the old while in high school. Bomber became Moonlight. Buzz also became known as Doc, and then he wasn't satisfied with that, so we called him Dutch. What was my nickname? Well, no less than Grub Greenmore named my middle brother Tom Beak. So of course my brother John was Beak Sr. and I was Beak Jr. I still don't know why. Somebody explain that one to me. So, from my sophomore through senior years in high school, I was on independent study where there would be a number of books assigned to read that would go in, that I could read, but then go in my own direction to create a project inspired by that reading. Oftentimes these projects took the form of a player sketch comedy, which would be performed for all the English classes over the course of a day. One such project was a presentation on the importance of reading. And right here, I'm going to get serious for a second. So the program was run by a young teacher named Bernie Hupperts. He was a mensch. Bernie, I always thought Bernie resembled a more handsome Woody Allen. In 1967, Bernie wrote a grant proposal for a kindergarten through grade 12 English program, which emphasized the teaching of English that prepares students to be well-spoken and make sound decisions in everyday life. I found a copy of this grant proposal written in 1968 on the internet. A good friend, Rich Hildenberg, class of 70 and nephew of Jerome, came to my house and in our house in Portland, and we were talking about this program. So I went online and started digging for it, and I actually found this typewritten document. It was like 60 pages of this proposal. They put it in 1967, and I ended up calling Bernie and talking to him about it. But the proposal brought in $187,000 to the Kaukauna school system. Now that would be, I did the math, that would be $1.35 million in 2019 dollars. So, and it's funny, Bernie, just a lot of people I talked to in our class and younger just, rave about Bernie. But I think he had a lot to do with my love of reading and just creativity. So Bernie was absolutely deserved every accolade he gets. He was just a wonderful teacher too, and brought in a lot of other good teachers. Okay, one thing, here you go, here's the message. According to the American Time Use Survey from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2017, roughly 19% of Americans aged 15 and older read for a pleasure on a given day. So 19% of Americans read for pleasure. This means aggregate reading time among Americans has fallen to 17 minutes per person per day in 2017. So anyway, not to make anybody feel guilty, but you gotta read, people! And you now have no excuse not to read, because Kaukauna has one of the most beautiful libraries in the whole country. Full disclosure, I've spent the last 4 years in publishing. Okay, tonight I've talked about my memories of growing up in Kaukauna. Well, I want to let you know that I'm not one of those folks who think everything was great 50 years ago, and we need to go back to it. Here are a couple things from those days that are gone, and good riddance to them. Road binder. If you were a kid in the 50s and 60s, you rode a bike everywhere you went. And if you rode a bike, you often came in contact with a tarry substance called road binder, a byproduct of the paper industry that would be spread on the unpaved roads of Kaukauna by giant tanker trucks. The worst thing you could do was ride through a pothole where the stuff had pooled up and it splashed on your uncovered legs because you wore shorts in the summer. It was a vile substance chock full of cancer-causing PCBs and PBBs that could only be removed with turpentine. From bad to worse. How many of you out there remember when medical doctors smoked in the exam? Our family doctor smoked Camels. And his office had burns from idling cigarettes all around the edges of the examination. He'd take a big drag, park the butt on the edge of the table you were sitting on, and stick a tongue depressor in your mouth. If you look at cigarette advertising in the 50s, you'll see taglines like, 9 out of 10 doctors prefer Camels. Or, doctors recommend a cigarette between each course of a meal to aid digestion. All right. Okay, that's enough. Let me leave you with an epilogue to one of the stories I started earlier. Remember Mr. Schmidt? Remember when Mr. Schmidt suspended us for our attempts to dress like him? Well, in the early 80s, while visiting my mother at the old Kaukauna Community Hospital, I noticed Mr. Walter Schmidt was in the room next to hers. Walking in, He recognized me right away. So the first thing I did was apologize for all the trouble I had given him. He smiled that big smile of his and said to me, "You weren't evil." On that day, I not only reconciled with Mr. Schmidt, but now have the epitaph that will appear on my tombstone. He may have resorted to buffoonery, but he wasn't evil.